let's talk about this absolutely honker of a patch note. Howdy, everybody. We had a big, fat, balanced palette. We'll fix it in post. Big balance patch notes. Maybe like the biggest ever. Just a couple of days ago. So we're going to go over that patch note now that we have actually played on the patch. The way we're going to do this, with patch notes this big, honestly, going through line by line is kind of useless because eventually your brain shuts off and it all becomes nothing. So what I'm going to do is try to cover sections and talking about, now that we've played with and against characters, going to be like, okay, in general, this character is better. Here's what they're doing better. Here's what they're doing worse. That kind of thing, instead of going through exactly line by line and just kind of talk about general changes to the game as best that we can in order to kind of get through this. Hopefully within 1 hour instead of 3 hours is the goal. So that's kind of our goal right now. So starting off, a couple of small things, a little bit of movement. You can jump during slide. Cool beans, you get a little bit of bonus. Air control. Shrines got a little bit changed. The first one is much easier to kill. The second one, honestly, is supposed to be a little bit harder, but feels easier to kill as well. And they also basically buffed the Super Troopers. They made it so those Super Troopers are easier to spawn. They reworked some of the bounty numbers. In general, a lot of this is, there is just more. There's more. You're going to see more souls in the game, and you're going to see more damage in the game. In general, we went from a tank meta with the previous patch to a really hardcore damage meta. Games are a lot shorter. Games are a lot more snowball. You get a lot more punished for things because there just is more damage and there just is more souls. If you die, you're missing out on more souls in general. Your characters can farm the jungle faster. There's even more jungle camps now that have been added, all sorts of that stuff. So they added some more neutral camps. Walkers are faster to kill, all of that kind of stuff. Everything just basically dies faster right now, regardless of if they got like more HP or not, because there's so much more damage in the game. Everybody is just easier to kill. Everything is easier to kill, including players. You're going to die faster as a player. The objectives are dying faster. Everybody's getting souls faster. The CC reduction was increased, which is nice. Honestly, they might have to increase this again. CC ridiculously strong right now. The more damage is in the game, the better CC becomes, because the more damage is in the game, it means that you are more likely to get 100 to 0'd within any given CC. So normally if in a Mo ulti you would come out with 30% HP, now you're coming out with no HP because there's so much more damage in the game. Cool little side note, Street Brawl doesn't have an item limit anymore. That's cool. Because why? You know what I'm saying? Why have an item limit? That's stupid. They added an item called Golden Goose Egg. This is the only new item in the patch. Kind of a meme item for the most part. Maybe you could pick it up on a super duper ultra support like a page. But it reduces your outgoing damage in exchange for you getting souls later in the game. Seems for the most part that you're not gonna really buy it. Okay, itemization. We're going to cover some of the bigger changes. High velocity rounds gives weapon damage, which is pretty cool. What else do we got? A lot of items got small changes. So like opening rounds is just generically better, right? 2 more spirit power, 5% more weapon damage. That's cool. You're going to see a lot of changes like that, 18% to 20%. We're not going to cover all of those. I'm going to look for anything that was a big one. Backstabber got renamed, which is fine, but it actually has to no longer procs based on angles of attack, but instead I'm doing bullet or melee damage within 8 meters of a hero target. So pretty big change there to how Stalker works. To be honest, they probably changed this because it never worked properly. Like, it basically would proc on you randomly, even if you were facing the target. I think they gave up on it. Melee charge, heavy melee bonus now works with heavy melee abilities. Huge buff basically to Goober within this. Goober punch builds went from being extremely good to literally busted. Like, Viscous maybe is like a top 3 hero Like super insanely good with the punch build now. Just disgusting. Ballistic got a little bit of buff here, 2% extra weapon damage, but they reduced the range a little. Weighted shots, this is a big one to talk about. Weighted shots is totally a different item now. It builds off of slowing bullets. It now has the slowing bullet passive. It does not give you spirit resist anymore, but now it gives you minus movement speed. Does not give you minus bullet velocity. The debuff resist got increased and the weapon damage got increased. TLDR, no more defenses, but it slows down the enemy and it does more damage. So it's a much more aggressive item, but it also comes with a bigger negative of that anti-movement. So pretty cool item, though. I've been really digging it on a character like Venator, whose ass is already glued to the floor and just wants a bunch of bonus damage. Pretty cool item now. Honestly, I would call it a buff to weighted shots for the characters that really like it. What else have we got? Same thing with Crushing Fist. Really relevant for Viscous. Frenzy got a little bit of a change. The base spirit resist was increased. The conditional fire rate was reduced, but the conditional spirit rate was also reduced. So it's like a little bit better at a baseline, but once the condition procs, it's a little bit worse. Probably an overall nerf to it. And then Spiritual Overflow, Spirit Power plus 10, and also grants 20% duration instead of the CD reduction. So another one of those exchanges. Is it better? Is it worse? Most of the items, like weighted shots is a big one. A lot of the items have done like, plus 2%, plus 2 damage, minus 2 damage. I haven't seen a ton of items get like entirely changed where like if you were building them beforehand, you're not now, or vice versa. For the most part, the builds have stayed relatively similar. It's just like little tiny spikes here and there outside of a couple of items. Going through these, Return Fire always hits the body of a target. So it doesn't miss anymore and it doesn't give headshots. So it's just more consistent, which is nice. Resilience is decent change here. The low resistance threshold has been increased. So beforehand, it would proc under 40% health. Now it's procking under 50, but you're getting less resistances. So procs earlier, but you get less resistances, and that's for both of them, which is a pretty big deal. Trophy Collector technically got buffed, but games are much, much shorter. I think Trophy Collector is dead right now. I would say my average game length went from like 35, 40 minutes to 25 to 30, like significantly shorter games right now, significantly. Dispel Magic got a cooldown buff, which is nice and important. Spellbreaker got nerfed by 10%. That was a pretty big one. Inhib got a little shift. It now gives you more weapon damage, but you do less weapon penalty to the enemy. So only minus 30% damage to the enemy, but you get an extra 3% weapon damage. Could be good for heroes like Venator. Who else got a big one? Siphon Bullet's got one. Now steals 2.5% of enemy max HP per bullet instead of a fixed amount. So if they have a really, really tanky squad, that item has become interesting right now. What else do we got here? All of these are like little changes here and there, little changes like Torment Pulse damage scaling reduced by a little bit. No longer hits sleeping enemies to wake them up. Like, that's nice. Like, Disarming Hex has got a lower cooldown. Most of these not too crazy, honestly. The rest of those, like, little plus or minuses, well, you're going to notice on your item, like, oh, I've got a little bit more cooldown or a little bit less and it's hitting a little bit harder. Those are all fine. Okay, now into the hero changes. So, same thing that we just did with the items. We're not going to go into every single line here. We're going to kind of talk about how the hero is playing now, if they're still good, if they're better, if they're worse, that kind of thing. Abrams, absolutely, positively still viable. He was basically in every game that I played today. Seems to be a little bit worse right now. Definitely not as strong as he probably was, but it doesn't seem like he got directly nerfed. So a lot of changes in here, little nerfs, little sidesteps and stuff. But in general, Looks like Abrams is slightly worse than he was before, but I would not say any sort of like, oh, this character is no longer playable. If you were wrecking with Abrams, you're probably still going to be wrecking with Abrams. You just might have to shift around your level order a little bit. You're going to see a lot of these like charge T1 change from weapon damage to slow, tier 2 wall stun increase, tier 2 cooldown increase. So you're going to see a lot of changes like this where they're kind of switching. A lot of the heroes got like their tier 2 is now their tier 1, but their tier 1 is now different, and their tier, like that kind of stuff. A lot of flipping back and forth on these. Apollo basically got nerfed. His repost no longer triggers though from trooper or neutral damage, which is actually kind of nice. His ultimate base damage got reduced, but the spirit scaling got increased. So, but the width no longer scales with the radius increase. It's kind of another like shift right here. He lost the lunge speed though on the Flawless Advanced Tier 2, which is a pretty big nerf. Overall, I would say small nerf for Apollo, but nothing crazy. Maybe if the game were to go a little bit longer, that extra spirit scaling on that would help. Bebop, Hook can now be canceled. That's his only change. I believe it's Bebop, Grey Talon, Venator, Viper, Holiday, and basically Bebop did not get any hero changes in this patch, and I think every single other hero did. I might be missing one, but if I named one of those heroes and you were looking for their balance, they didn't get any, basically. Outside of that, congratulations, your hero changed in some form or fashion. Billy, once again, you can see this giant wall of text. Like Bashdown radius has been reduced. The tier 2 changed from plus 1.3 radius to 1 charge and 2 radius. Rising Slim. Billy seems to be give or take the same balance-wise. I saw approximately the same amount of Billies today as normal, and they did approximately just as well as normal. So from my experience today, he didn't seem to get a giant buff or a giant nerf. He seemed to be playing mostly in okay. I think that a lot of the tanks are still going to be totally fine, even though we have transitioned into a very clear DPS meta. And obviously you would think like, oh, I'm a tank. I'm supposed to tank more damage, but if everybody's doing more damage. But at the same time, tanks in Deadlock also do a ton of damage, right? So just because the meta kind of shifted that way doesn't mean that's like there's no tanks anymore. It's just like tanks are also kind of doing more damage, you know? And they're just less tanky, and everybody is just kind of squishier in general. Another thing to be noted, the chain gang no longer gives the spirit and bullet resist, and the cooldown was increased, but the tier 1 was changed from minus 25 cooldown to 40% spirit and bullet resist, you know? The tier 2 now has the cooldown instead of additional spirit and bullet resist. So you can see like they're making changes like this, but that entire section of changes is kind of nothing, right? Like it changes a little bit of like the early mid game in terms of like where you're putting your points into stuff. But the end result is very, very similar to how Billy was already playing. That's what I have found to be with most of the characters, is the biggest change to all the heroes is rethinking how you put in your actual points and making it a little bit less clear. Like a lot of heroes was you always do 2 points here, then 3 here, then 2 here, then 2, right? I think that with this patch, they've opened up the allocation of points a lot more, and I think that it's a lot more anecdotal and a lot more personal preference how you put in the points. Quite a few characters that we played today, I looked at it and I was like, oh, I could put in the points this way and maybe I would change my build a little bit, but then I could put in my points that way and I would run my build and playstyle a little bit more this way. So it does actually seem that in this patch, some play styles have maybe opened up and you can get a little bit more unique with some of your point allocation. Calico, look at this, another giant wall of text. So her ulti gives her healing at the end now, instead of the damage amp. Honestly, still pretty damn good for her. In general, Calico seems to be doing pretty strong. You're going to see some changes here, like Leaping Tier 2, changed from plus 40 damage to plus 300 souls on hero kill. The T3 changed from minus 50 CDR on hit to minus 50 CDR and plus 60 damage. In general, Calico seems to be buffed. I had a lot of Calicos in my games today. Couple of them fed, but I suspect that it was because they were coming to play Calico after she got buffed and not because she wasn't doing well, because we had then had a couple other Calicos that absolutely were fragging the entire game. So in general, Calico seems to be buffed, doing well, seems to get a lot of souls, a lot of it because of that T2 leaping slash change. So Calico doing well. Oh yeah, Sinclair also did not get any changes. I forgot if I mentioned him in that group earlier. Celeste escaping, getting brutally sent to the glue farm. Gravity reduced from minus 20 to minus 20%, minus 28%, so less gravity in general. Her air control acceleration was a little bit reduced. Her Shining Wonder, which is her ulti bounce range, was reduced by 2 meters, and then the linger duration was also reduced. So Celeste basically escaping sudden death. I really thought she was going to get nerfed into the floor. Celeste coming out slightly worse, but in general, totally fine. Doorman. All right. So here's the deal, guys. Of all the heroes in this patch, Doorman was the biggest winner of the patch by far. There is going to be a small balance patch after this patch. So there's going to be this entire patch thing we're going through, and then there's going to be a small addendum at the end that we will cover. But in general, and like Doorman gets slightly nerfed back down on it, Doorman, by far biggest winner of the patch, buffs out the ass. Out the wazoo. Essentially, every single ability is like better now for Doorman. The biggest takeaway, his call bell is a nuke again. A nuke. Spirit Doorman is back. His one hits so hard, and his ultimate is disgusting. It is much harder to get out of now. It does a longer stun, more damage, and it has a 13-second cooldown if you do not get out. If whoever gets sent to the Baroness does not get out, he can basically use it immediately over again. Doorman is disgusting and honestly probably ban-worthy. Right now, if I had to ban a hero, I would be picking between Viscous and Doorman. I think Viscous is probably generically better, but Doorman is so annoying right now, it is ridiculous. Viscous, also super annoying. So it's like, but those would be, honestly, between my two bans right now, strictly because I don't necessarily know if they're the best heroes in the game, but they are very, very strong to extraordinarily annoying ratio. V high. Drifter got some changes here. They made him a little bit more of a bursty hero. So his sustained damage seems to be a little bit less, but his burst damage basically seems to be better. Things like the Ren bonus are now the melee range at close range, so you don't get the Ren bonus when you're like outside of like a really close range. So Drifter has been changed a little bit. They want him to be closer. They want Drifter to be all up in your business, all up in your face, getting up in melee, like that melee range kind of situation. So a little bit less of like a long-range Drifter going around giving you the fingernails, and a little bit more close-range Drifter giving you a big ol' hug is kind of his change. In general, doesn't seem to be a ton better, ton worse. I would say fairly neutral exchange here for Drifter. Dynamo. So here's the thing. A lot of the supports got technically buffed, okay? Dynamo and Kelvin particularly come to mind. I am not sold yet after playing on the new patch. Obviously, everything will take time to get used to and for everybody else to get used to playing on the new patch. My anecdotal experience so far is that supports are kind of useless. It seems that right now, with how much damage is in the game, the things that a support does aren't nearly as important. I would say the exception to the rule is probably Paige and then Ivy, although Ivy got crazy buffed and is also not even really a support. I would almost qualify Ivy and Mo right now to be very similar, and they're both doing really well, but I wouldn't put them either in the support category. They're kind of like support adjacent, but like the true supports seem to be struggling a little bit right now. So technically, I think Dynamo is stronger, but within the meta space, kind of feels weaker right now. Graves, nothing big here. Basically as good as they were before. A little, grasping hands, cooldown reduced, increase, change the immobilized duration to plus damage and walling, that kind of stuff. Haze is really good. You're going to see a fair amount of kind of nerfs in here and kind of changes, T3 increase from 0.12 weapon damage to 0.14, that's a buff. But the T1 fixation reduced from plus 50 spare damage to plus 40. So little buffs, little nerfs. In general, the game has more damage, right? She lost the bullet evasion on the T3, but now fires at an additional target on the T3. So you've got stuff like that. Haze is totally fine. Haze still does a bajillion damage. Maybe I would say a little bit nerfed. I would say Haze probably comes out of this exchange with a small nerf. Still feels good because the damage is just generically so high. If you want to read, by the way, this patch notes line by line, I will put the links to both of them in the description down below on the patch notes. But as you can see so far, you will genuinely take 4 hours to read the entire thing. So Haze gets the bullet evasion baseline on the ability now, so you don't need it on the T3, so then you get to fire the additional target over here. But she has the fire rate bonus has been reduced, and you've got also, so she gets some buffs and she gets some nerfs, some quality of life stuff, but in general, I would say slightly nerfed. Infernus, another huge winner in this patch. I went from seeing basically no Infernus is getting played, and when he did, he fed, to Infernus is being in almost every game today, and almost every Infernus was fed. So Infernus is back on the menu, unfortunately. His damage is really good. He's still pretty hard to kill. In general, all of the really high damage characters are living large right now. Infernus is loving life. Wraith is loving life. A lot of freaking damage right now in the game. Infernus, another massive winner of this patch. Probably not as big of a winner as Doorman was. But maybe the second biggest winner in this patch. So expect a lot of Infernuses to be hitting your games. He's back on the menu, boys. Ivy, another big winner in this patch. In general, Ivy is just getting kind of buffed across the board. Entangling Thorns is kind of a monster ability now. The Ivy connection at the final tier, +1 tether count, and ability is now always active, which is really cool. Airdrop, getting some sick stuff. Pretty much buffs across the board, honestly, for Ivy. Some of the abilities got nerfed at base, but then you get it back and they're stronger with the points in it. Another one of those heroes where it's you have to choose your points now. Am I going to get this for the really cool thing, or am I going to get this for the really cool thing? But Ivy, definitely a big winner in this patch. Pretty well getting buffed across the board. Seeing a lot more Ivies getting played. Not necessarily, like I said, a pure support. Definitely in that Moe style of range, which is more AoE disruption, good damage, kind of lockdown style of gameplay. You're seeing a lot of that from Ivy right now. So a lot of embracing some spirit damage as well. really going for like the airdrops and the entangling thorns, and then also getting something like a capacitor that's proccing spirit damage on it for the autos. Very common right now. Kelvin. So Kelvin got some buffs. Unfortunately, Kelvin did get the worst nerf in the game, which is Kelvin's Ice Path now has the worst sound effect of all time in the history of video games, and every time you press it, your ears are going to bleed. For some reason, they thought it was a good idea to take like ice on a chalkboard and then rub chalk on the chalkboard with the ice, and it is truly unbearable. Like, I don't know if I could play Kelvin again. This is how much it hurts my ears. Outside of that, though, he did genuinely get big buffs. His grenade is awesome now. It heals at a baseline. His ulti, he can actually cast on a teammate fairly close to him, which is cool. He heals even more than he used to. Genuine buffs across the board for Kelvin. When I played him, I thought to myself, I would so much rather just be a carry. I really think if there was picks and bans right now, the supports could potentially be in a good spot. I think without any picks and bans, I still think there's no reason to play support in Deadlock right now, because if you pick a support and the game just happens to give you 2 or 3 of them, you're going to lose 100% of your games. I would say it's probably almost impossible to win a game of Deadlock right now with how good damage is with 2 or 3 supports. You probably want exactly 1 support on your team. And even then, like, realistically, just having 6 damage heroes is just generically better. Like, so I would recommend not playing support. It's just honestly, even though they are buffing them, supports they need to pick some bans. Lady Geist, thick buffs on the Geist. Specifically, Spirit Geist is back on the menu. So she's hurting herself less with her abilities. Life Drain is disgusting now. Increase the DPS, increase the duration, and increase the charges. And increase his scaling. Life Drain hits so hard. You get like 17 charges, and it is a big fat suck. Her ulti gives silence to all enemies on the 2nd point, which is crazy. And the 3rd point is 60 spirit power, 40 fire rate, and 50% spirit resistance. Geist, way better. Way better. Went from being unplayable to like, damn, this hero is good. Another big winner in this patch. Lash seems to be fairly neutral. They changed some of his stuff around. So, like, tier 3 grapple is no longer fire rate. You get extra air control and plus stamina. That's a huge win for Lash, in my opinion. But, like, flog cooldown's a little bit longer. The angle no longer scales with spirit power. The throw distance no longer scales with spirit power. And the cooldown was increased. But now the throw distance was increased on the 1. You can see, like, a lot of these things, like, get changed around. Like, yeah, no longer scales with spirit power, but he gets the extra 4 meters here. So some buffs, some nerfs. I've still seen plenty of people land good ultis with Lash, but I also am seeing a lot more people buying like Mystic Expansion. So you might just need to grab yourself a little bit of extra range on Lash now. But in general, his damage is still good. His rotations are still good. Maybe a small nerf, but in general, pretty neutral. McGinnis, a fat ass buff. Okay, so I'm going to let you know right now. I'm going to let you finish. But first, I got to let you know that McGinnis had the best ulti in the damn game right now. McGinnis' ulti is crazy. Crazy. So all of this giant text, here's what you need to know. McGinnis turrets are hitting hard. McGinnis ultimate is hitting disgustingly hard. And by disgustingly hard, this is what I mean. Played with McGinnis's in almost every single game today. Her pick rate must be nearly 100%. Her ultimate in the late game, and by late game, I mean 25 minutes, because 25 minutes is the late game now. Most of my games ended in between 25 and 35, most of them pushing the 25 to 30. 900 damage per second. Per second at the 25-minute marker. That is unbelievable damage. It's an AoE that basically aims itself. If you do not get on McGinnis's ass and kill her, her ulti will win every single team fight right now. It is that good. Her turrets are also doing... We played with a guy today, and this is true, who had top damage in the game. I looked at his damage after the match. 95% of his total damage in the match was his ultimate, his turrets, or an item proccing off of his ultimate, like an escalating exposure. Only 5% of his damage came from his gun and everything else. The ulti did 50% total damage, and the turrets did 40%. And he had the top damage in the game by far. Spirit McGinnis builds, 100%. Back in the meta, gun McGinnis builds, dead. Ugh. Head cut off of gun builds. They're dead for McGinnis. Spirit McGinnis is back. Okay, so Mina, here's the thing with Mina. She got buffed. I don't know. I was going to try to break it to you guys gently, and I didn't know how to. Regardless of what all of this says, here's the deal with Mina. Her damage is still roughly the same, I should say, percentage-wise, right? Everybody's doing more damage because everybody's basically a little bit squishier. The thing about Mina is that Mina was insanely good, but she dropped off, right? There was a point in the game where you could no longer 100-0 the enemy team. And once you couldn't 100-0 on Mina anymore, she dropped off a little bit. Because there's just generically more damage in the game, Mina's drop-off basically doesn't happen. Because games are also ending so much earlier. Because they're ending by the 30-minute marker and everybody's doing more damage before the 30-minute marker, Mina is kind of 100-0ing for the entire game. So she went from being super duper annoying to like busted. I think Mina is super strong right now. And also, in case you were just wondering and wanted a reason to like slam your head against a wall, real quick, just look at this. T1 changed from 3-meter cast range to plus 20% fire rate in 8 bullets. Okay? They lowered how far her dash goes. Cool. Tier 2 changed from fire rate in bullets to minus cooldown. Cool. Tier 3 changed from minus 12-second cooldown to plus 1 recast. She can dash 3 times. Because why not? Because why not? She dashes a little bit shorter, but now she has more immunity frames. Yeah. Mina's good. Mina's good. Mirage. His win rate basically went into the floor. So, in general, I have to say that he's nerfed. From what I heard from everybody, I only saw one Mirage today, and he did not do particularly well. From what I've seen, Mirage's early game, in general, is nerfed, and his late game is still totally fine. But because games are not going nearly as long, Mirage does not have as much time to get as late game as he used to. He has always struggled in a ranked sense. He's always been a like competitive hero. He's never been particularly good in the regular game. And he still seems to be not particularly good in the regular game right now. So probably not a huge change for his win rate in the actual game itself, because his win rate was already super low. But I imagine that these changes are more targeted towards competitive. As for the regular game, he's kind of going from not very good to not very good. Mo and Krill, big winner. Big winner in this patch. In general, They just gave Mo more damage. They basically gave the man more damage and easier scaling. Scorn, you're going to see damage reduced from 56 to 50, but then they gave him this 35 damage here, which is overall actually more damage. And then they increased his spirit scaling. On the Burrow, they gave, the tier 2 was 68 spin DPS, 2 radius, but now they put the spin DPS on the first point, so you can just get 1 point for the damage. The ulti, they increased the cooldown like crazy, but you can actually just get the tier 3 and you get the cooldown basically back down to normal. In general, buffs for Mo. He felt really, really strong before the patch. He feels really, really strong after the patch. Couple of huge things for Mo. Because there's more damage in the game, his disarm's even better, and his ulti's even better. Targets inside of his ulti just die like 100% of the time, and he stops people from doing damage, which is crazy important now because every second is massively important. Paige got some of the most important changes in Deadlock, which is Conjure Dragon has now been renamed to Bookworm, and her shield is now renamed to Plot Armor. And I can't think of anything more important. Those are basically the biggest 2 changes in this patch. I mean, like meta-defining. Can't even believe it wasn't that way beforehand. Like, how is it Bookworm? Come on, baby. It's so good. It's so good. In fact, these changes were so good, I'm pretty sure they copy-pasted these like directly from Reddit. I'm pretty sure somebody on Reddit told them that they should be named this, and then they literally did it because they were like, holy shit, they should have been named this. Which is excellent. Other than that, Paige, to me, seems to be probably still the best support in the game. I feel as though Paige is one of the few characters that it can actually utilize the new egg and get herself bonus souls off of it. Her kit is still just an insanely good support kit. And it's one of the only characters that if I were to play a support, I'd be like, I want to play Paige. Regardless of anything, honestly, that they do to her abilities, lane clear, shield for the team, giant heal, AoE, stun, knock up, and root is always going to be a good kit. Almost non-negotiable. So if you're going to play a support right now, I would still play Paige over anybody else. Paradox. Look what they've done to you. Look what they did to my beautiful girl. Paradox got basically an entire kit change, which is a funny thing to say for somebody whose abilities are literally the same. But they really shifted Paradox from what seems to be a more assassin-style gameplay to a more spirit initiator type, which is what Paradox has been in the past. Paradox kind of bobbles back and forth between like, I'm a gun one-shot character if I land everything, and I kind of just initiate for my team and I throw down big bombs. We're kind of back into the big bomb territory. I personally, people seem to be pretty split on saying it's a buff or it's a nerf. For me, it feels like a nerf because my style of Paradox gameplay that I prefer feels pretty bad now. I'm not going to play Paradox anymore in this meta. I feel like the style of gameplay and the way that I enjoy playing Para, it does not feel particularly viable anymore. If you're somebody that wants to do like an Echo Shard bomb build, that is probably better than it was in the past, than it was in the last patch, I should say. But I still don't actually even think it's necessarily better than Paradox just was last patch period. For me, probably an overall nerf to Paradox, and I was not impressed by the performances that I saw today on her, nor my own personal performance. I was not impressed with that either. Next up, we got Pocket. So Pocket's a weird one. In general, Pocket should be buffed. A lot of cool quality of life changes for Pocket. So like You can use Flying Cloak during Barrage, and you can also use Stamina. Neato. The Flying Cloak, they did some changes. The tier 1 cooldown on Cloak is damage right off the bat, which is cool, but you don't get the cooldown until later. His damage feels good. His Affliction no longer does the 12% current health damage, but they increase the DPS over time. And one of the big things that they did here is the tier 3 prevents all healing on targets. All healing. 100% anti-heal on the Pocket Ult. But I played Pocket twice today. I played with and against Pockets all day. And he seemed worse. Like, on paper, it feels like he should be better. From every Pocket that I saw today, worse performances than I saw in the last patch. So, not sure if it's just like needs more time to adjust and get used to it. But in my experience in the game so far, Pocket does not seem to be... My theory is Pocket used to have really good burst damage, and now he still has really good burst damage, except for now everybody has good burst damage, and most people just have better sustained damage. And so I feel like Pocket right now would be a really good hero in a picks and bans, because you could pick Pocket as like a 5th, 6th pick against a super heavy sustained comp. They've got a Geist, they've got a Victor, they've got a 7 who you know is going to have a big ulti with Infuser. Like, all of those things I feel like would be really good. But right now, just YOLOing into the Pocket pick, I have not been impressed so far. Maybe his build needs to change up a little bit in order to make him work, but I have not been impressed with Pocket so far. So I feel like perhaps his general goodness went down, but his counter pick ability went up, except for there's no counter picks in Deadlock because there's no picks and bans. Rem. Rem still feels more or less the same given his changes, but supports feel more or less worse. So in general, I would say Rem feels about the same personally, but worse overall because just not having big damage just kind of feels worse. So broadly, this patch's damage scale went way up across the board. Yes, damage is way up across the board. Jungle camps are dying faster. Guardians and walkers are dying faster. Games are ending faster. Heroes are dying faster. You're more likely to die in the laning phase. Like, time to kill across the board is faster. Everything in Deadlock is faster now. Like, period. Like, everything happens faster. You do more damage faster. You die faster. You shove lanes faster. Games end faster. Everything is faster. 7, didn't see amazing 7 performances today. His movement speed no longer scales with spirit power, but his sprint speed was increased. Honestly, I consider that a nerf. His static charge cast rate no longer increases with spirit power. Like, that's a nerf. In general, I would say 7 probably felt a little worse. They changed a lot of his, like, tier 2 was minus 10 spirit resist for 6 seconds. Now it's plus movement speed, 8 damage, increased spirit scaling. And then the tier 3 is the additional shock damage now. Went from the additional shock damage to the minus spirit resist, which used to be on the second point, but it's a little bit more. Like, I haven't been impressed with 7 so far. Stormcloud is allowed to move, though, in the base ability, which is cool, but now he doesn't get the bullet resistance, but then the bullet resistance gets put back on the T1, you know, a lot of that stuff. I would say 7 went from having literally the highest win rate in Eternus to, I imagine it's probably not anymore, but I still feel like as long as 7's ultimate is, I do big lightning, I feel like his win rate's always going to be pretty good because anybody can kind of just play 7 and, like, land your power surge a couple of times and then click Stormcloud. So His win rate and like how actually good he is are probably a little dissonant from each other in the opposite way that, say, Mirage's is, where like Mirage is probably better than his win rate indicates, and 7 is, probably worse than his win rate indicates. But at the end of the day, win rates are win rates. Shiv. So here's the thing with Shiv. His ulti is no longer auto aim. It's no longer unit targeted. You jump in the direction forward with some small control. So it does not auto lock on with that unit target, but it still is fairly straightforward from what I have seen to aim. The knives got some changes as well. Tier 1 is now plus 2 second duration. Tier 2 is now plus 2 charges. And the Tier 3 is a DPS increase. So Knife Shiv is back on the menu for sure. A lot of knives being thrown out from Shiv. Very annoying character. Honestly, Shiv still feels about the same. Like, I like that his ultimate isn't auto aim anymore. I think that was stupid. But in general, getting hit by his knives still blows. Like, if you get hit by a decay from Shiv and 2 knives, that's basically 100% of your HP still. So if you really liked Shiv beforehand, you're probably going to like him now. And if you hated playing against him, you're probably still going to hate playing against him. Just a little bit easier to avoid executions because it doesn't like haunt your ass through a wall anymore the way that like a Yamato does, because now it's actually an aimed ability. This section says that Silver was removed from Deadlock. Silver's not good. Silver's not good. So for all of my furry friends out there, I'm sorry, but your hero is, basically what they did is they were like, okay, Silver is pretty cool in her human form, and her werewolf form is stronger than her human form. So what if we made a werewolf that was weaker than a human? Which is an interesting philosophy. But her werewolf was kind of gutted. Her werewolf is less werewolf, more like girl wearing puppy ears. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of like a puppy, but it's also mostly just a girl. You know? So Silver has been kind of removed from the game. Victor honestly seems easier to deal with. I'm not 100% sure if it was his changes or just that there's more damage in the game. But quite a few Victors that we have played against, in general, seems that we just do more damage, which means that Victor's sustain is a little bit easier to deal with. Also, now that Pocket's ulti has 100% anti-heal, if you're Pocket against Victor, Victor cannot play the game. You ulti him on cooldown, and he goes, damn it, Bobby. Damn it, Bobby. And then he dies. So kind of a hard counter for him right now, for sure. Still an annoying character to go against. Obviously, he's going to dive your tower with his res up, and he's going to push your walkers because walkers are easier to kill now. They're squishier. But in a general, I would say that Victor is about as good as he was beforehand. Maybe just a little bit easier to deal with because there's just so much more damage in the game. Vindicta. Now, this is going to be, I think, a disappointing one to people. I think this one's going to be disappointing. I think Vindicta is worse. This is also the hero that I'm least confident on being correct a week from now. So, all of the heroes so far, I'm pretty confident that a week from now, I will stand by my assessment. My assessment of Vindicta right now is that she is worse. But I do think that maybe because of her changes, it's going to take extra time to get used to how to play her now and to properly switch around the builds and some of the play styles and that kind of stuff. So my knee-jerk reaction on Vindicta is that she's worse. But if a week from now I'm like, oh, I solved it, I also wouldn't be super surprised. For the rest of the heroes so far, I'd be pretty surprised if I was like drastically incorrect at how they're going to end up based off of how our game so far. TLDR and Vindicta, they really kind of pushed her back in a support direction where they like made her tether super cool and they gave her the big thing for her is that her flight gives her 50% item cast range. So if you cast an item in your flight, it's freaking huge. So if you cast an alchemical fire, it basically takes up the whole battleground. Like, it's massive. But in terms of helping Vindicta, that really pushes her like into support items. Like, it's almost like they want her to get to go into her flight, pop a vortex web, pull everybody in, then root them all, and then alchemical fire, which is cool. But like, her ultimate in builds still want her to build a bunch of spirit damage, and her ulti still gives her weapon damage. So she's got all of this damage scaling in her kit, but then the big changes to her this time really made her into a more supporty style thing. And so my problem with Vindicta right now is she seems like really okay at a bunch of different things instead of really good at one thing, which I don't think in Deadlock is really useful. I think in Deadlock, you're way better off being a specialist than a jack of all trades. So the question is, can you hone in on one of these things and make it really strong? My best guess right now to make her viable is you might give up on the gun damage entirely, which kind of sucks, and go a spirit support build. My theory right now is if you go something along the lines of early game, still getting your rapid recharge, your, boundless spirit, getting a lot of ults going for damage, and then take that and transition into like a mystic expansion, suppressor, alchemical fire style, just like big AoE helping the team. And I do think that a vortex web on her followed up by a max level root would probably be super efficient. I don't necessarily think that she's going to be as viable as a full damage character, because with how much CC is in the game, her ass is just not going to stay in the air. She can counterspell now in flight, which is cool, but I just don't think it's enough to keep her in the air long enough to get a bunch of her damage off late game against all of the knockdowns in the game and the Moes being played and all that kind of stuff. So Vindicta might have gotten pushed back towards a support direction, and I might be cool. Viscus got buffed out of his ass. Just out of his gooey, ooey ass, he got buffed. His punch hurt. So the charge time was increased slightly, I guess, which is whatever. The slow was increased. Puddle Punch now acts as if it's close range with respect to item procs, like point blank. They reduced the radius, all that kind of stuff. But the tier 2 has been changed from plus damage and movement slow to plus radius and damage. Just in general, man, I'm telling you, with the changes to the punch kind of items across the board and the changes to his kit a little bit, Viscus is straight up an insanely strong character right now. Like, very, very, very good. Like, we'll go way up the tier list, Morty. Punch build is 100% it. Like, grab the Crushing Fists, grab the Life Strike, grab the Spirit Punch item, whose name is currently eluding me. You know what I'm talking about. Get your punch items. Get the greater expansion for the punch, or just get the tier 1 expansion and throw it on your punch in order to make that circle bigger. Big punch build Viscus is 100% baller right now. 100% baller. Warden I did not see a lot of today, so I'm actually going to look more in-depth at these changes here. Flash damage increase on the T2. What else we got here? Tier 2 now increases weapon damage reduction by minus 20%. What a crazy way to word that. No longer increases by 1 radius, though. Barrier now scales with spirit power in the base ability. But the cooldown from 19 to 22. Okay. Change from 150 barrier health and improved scaling to 40% debuff resistance and improved scaling. Okay. Binding word cast range reduced. Nice. Cooldown was decreased though. Plus bullet damage to trapped heroes for 5 seconds instead of the extra immobilized duration. Okay. But then he gets it back. Of course he does. Wow. Tier 3, though, minus 18 cooldown, silences enemies until they escape or are trapped. Horrifying. Horrifying. So you get stats disgusting. That's gross. Absolutely not. What? Hate that. Last stand radius reduced by 1 meter. Last stand shelling bullet I'm sorry. Sure, why not? Last stand channeling bullet and spear resist increased from 30 to 60%. Sure, just let him stand there and channel, I guess. Tier 1 gives him his extra radius back. No longer gets the resistances because he gets the baseline. Duration increased by 0.5. Last stand grants you unstoppable while channeling. Cool. So Warden seems fine. He's going to be fine. So, I mean, Warden was super duper good. And, I mean, most of this to me seems like better than worse. So, I didn't see a lot of Warden today, and I'm feeling kind of thankful that I didn't because seems pretty good. I mean, he was already one of the best heroes in the game. Kind of seems like he's going to be one of the best heroes in the game still. So, there you go. Speaking of best heroes in the game, remember how Wraith was like not one of the best heroes in the game for a little bit? Well, Deadlock was having none of that. And she's one of the best heroes in the game again. Her cards have gambling on them now. So you don't need to gamble with skins out of boxes. You can just play Wraith. And you can gamba by throwing out her cards. Which can get a Joker, which does every effect and bounces to an additional enemy. Cool. Cards hit a ton of damage. They're a nightmare. Her ultimate throws people in a direction that you want. So her ultimate is like a mini Lashel in a way where she can yeet you towards her or away from her or whatever she wants. It's also, as you can see, telekinesis no longer has a projectile and now instantly lifts the target and gives you a location target on the ground. After the seconds is over, it throws the hero towards the location up to 15 meters away. They take damage, movement slow, and prevents stamina/movement items and ability usage for 3 seconds. Super fun to play against Wraith right now. Super dynamic on the ulti. That is sarcasm. It is awful. Wraith is super duper strong right now. Hide your kids, hide your wife. It's a problem. She is maybe... Wraith is up there with Doorman as the biggest winner of the patch. For sure. Like, Wraith, Infernus, Doorman are probably the 3 biggest winners. I'm trying to think anybody else that we've covered. McGinnis, massive winner. Viscus, pretty big winner. Ivy, pretty big winner. Hey, Yamato! Yamato's still annoying. Yamato is seemingly the same. Like, from our games today, a good Yamato is super strong, and a bad Yamato is not. You know, like, good Yamato will mess up your day, and a bad Yamato is basically fine. So, all of these changes onto her. She still does the thing where her 1 hits for 1 billion damage, and that sucks. Her 2 hunts your ass down, and that sucks. Her ulti makes her invincible, and that sucks. But in general, Yamato is kind of just wrecking everybody. So, basically as good as she was before. If you were a good Yamato, you're still loving life. If you were a bad Yamato, you are not loving life. All right, now we have the super secret bonus balance. That's right. Not regular balance. The bonus balance. That's right, guys. That's right. So this is patches. This was a patch of the patch. So we had the big patch. This is the patch of the patch. All right. So the golden goose egg, the souls per minute were increased. The torment pulse damage was reduced again by a little bit. They nerfed technically the doorman ulti cooldown. Instead of being a 10-second cooldown, it's 13 seconds, which is the most not change I've ever seen in my entire life. They slightly reduced the Ivy Entangling Thorns. They buffed Paradox on the patch quite a bit. But even after this patch, this is what we played on. Paradox still did not feel amazing. Silver got a little bit of a buff back because they killed her and she felt a little bit better, but still not great. Viscous, they technically nerfed, but he still feels busted. And Wraith, they technically nerfed, but she still feels busted, guys. So that is all of the patch. So in general, on this patch right now, things you need to know. Games are shorter. Damage is sky high. You have to be careful in the laning phase because there is more snowball potential. There is more death potential. Rotations into other lanes, doing a bunch of damage to another lane. Of course, very good right now. You're able to burn walkers much faster. They are squishier. The mid-boss dies pretty fast as well, and he yells at like half HP now instead of, I believe, 70%. So you have to be more ready for the mid-boss because there's less time to get to the mid-boss, so you got to be more set up for it because by the time you hear the yell, the mid-boss is basically already dead. If you get down a team's shrine or two, the game is basically over. I don't think I saw a single game where the team that got the first shrine or two didn't also win the game, because if you're in somebody's base, by the time you get there, honestly, the leads have been anywhere from 30 to 60,000 souls. I would say the average soul lead of the enemy team that I played was approximately 50,000. So whether the game was ending at 25 or 35 minutes, I would say on average, the team that was winning had about a 50,000 soul lead, which is an insane amount of souls, more than last patch, where I would say the winning team had probably closer to a 30,000 soul lead on the enemy team. So expect quicker games, expect more damage, and all of those heroes that we mentioned that were big winners, expect them to be quite a bit better. Not a ton of heroes felt objectively worse. I would say Paradox for me is the exception. Like Paradox definitely felt worse, and Silver definitely feels worse. Outside of those two heroes, most heroes got some sort of either like neutral or like big buff kind of situation. And then supports in general as an archetype, I am not sold on their role in the meta right now. So Dynamo Rem, Kelvin, even though he got buffed, like those types of heroes, I'm just not sold on supports in this meta right now with the DPS. It feels like they don't have enough time to come online. Feels like they fall behind in farm because there's just not enough damage for them to go around and get a bunch of farm, and they fall super far behind because everybody's farming so freaking fast right now. So not sold on supports in general, and then Paradox and Silver. Other than that, everybody else is basically having a grand old time, guys. And that is your Deadlock patch note. Thank you for watching today's video. If you'd like to support the Twitchiest community, please go ahead and like, comment, and share this video. It really does help, guys. So thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. And as always, folks, have a Twitchin' day, y'all.